So we are going to mix it up a little bit now and do a fireside chat with Rachael Chong, who is the founder and CEO of Catchafire, the largest online skills-based volunteer marketplace. Catchafire has over 3,000 organizations and 15,000 professionals on its platform today. And Rachael is not only an expert on skills-based volunteering and service generally, but also in social enterprise and corporate social responsibility. Rachael founded Catchafire at the age of 27. She was named to Fast Company's list of the 100 most creative people in business in 2012, and she's received the prestigious NYC Venture Fellowship and the Tribeca Disruptive Innovation Award. Please welcome Rachael Chong. So, Rachael, why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about Catchafire? Give us the 411 on the company and what you do.
Sure. So, as you nicely put it in the beginning, Catchafire is an online platform, and we're connecting nonprofits and social enterprises to people who want to give their time and their talent pro bono. And what that means is that we help nonprofits identify key needs, structure those needs into well-scoped projects that are short-term and discrete. And then our website, which works like an eHarmony or a Match.com, actually then matches the right professional based on their skill set and their cause interest to that nonprofit's specific project. And so both parties are happy because the nonprofit is receiving the talent that they need to get something done, and the professional is happy because for the first time they can actually volunteer their time and talent, and I think very importantly they're able to give their skills, which is actually a pretty hard thing to do when you're trying to find a volunteer experience.
So I have to ask this early on, because I'm sure it's one of those things that people wonder, because you actually charge the organizations to be involved. And so if this is sort of a social good project, why that logic?
I actually think it's better for our mission to charge. And the reason for that is a key part of our model is to ensure that there's skin in the game on both sides. We're trying to create the best volunteer experiences possible that not only, again, the professional will benefit from, but also the organization. And free is a very interesting and elusive and bizarre thing, and it's challenging because when people accept things for free, they're not necessarily thinking about the opportunity cost of that.
Totally being diplomatic. You can say what you think.
And so by charging the nonprofit a small fee, and on average it's about $700 to $1,000 per project match, we're ensuring that they're serious before they take on that COO of Christie's Auction House or that brand expert from Ogilvy. We want to make sure that their time is being valued, and so that skin in the game piece is critically important.
Mm-hmm. So give us a little sense of the genesis of Catchafire. How did you get started?
Gosh, it's I guess my journey, my own life story brought me to where we are at today, and that is way back when. I grew up actually in China, so I was born in Australia, moved to China when I was 8 years old because my mother is in the Australian Foreign Service, and so when I was 8, I was exposed to poverty for the first time. And in my 8-year-old mind, I was thinking, how come the world is so unfair? And so I wanted to make the world more fair. So the seed of thought was there, which is like, this is what I was going to do for the rest of my life, which was make the world more fair. Fast forward to college. I came to the US for college. I went to Barnard at Columbia. And right after college, I went into investment banking. And I went into investment banking, if you can imagine, very idealistically. It sounds very ironic, but I did. And the goal of that was to actually learn about the markets, because my idea was I wanted to take market forces and figure out how to harness them to create massive social change. And so banking was my education, and it was a darn good one. While I was there, though, I tried to stay true to what I really loved, and so I tried to volunteer. And the firm that I was at had the traditional volunteer program where they put everyone on a bus and we bussed out to a Habitat for Humanity build. And I love Habitat, and I think traditional volunteering is very important. But for me, it was very frustrating to see 200 of my peers, these analysts who came from the top schools that were spending an entire day picking up a hammer. I'm 5'2", 110 pounds. Like the best use of my skills is not to build a house. And so it was really frustrating for me. And so after that, I went back to my desk and I was like, okay, I'm going to find an opportunity where I can actually use what I'm good at and volunteer that. Mm-hmm. And I found it really hard to find that opportunity. I searched literally for 6 months, almost every single day, and I couldn't find that skills-based volunteer opportunity. And I just thought that was absurd. Again, at that time, I wasn't thinking about starting anything. Mm-hmm. Actually, what it made me do was quit banking and go into the nonprofit sector. So I found out about microfinance, and I was like, this is amazing. It's combining my passion for finance and my passion for poverty alleviation work. So like Azita, mm-hmm. who got into her work by volunteering for a big chunk of time, I actually spent 6 months and I gave away my time for free for a great microfinance institution in DC called Finca. And that got me into the microfinance space, which was very hot, and it was pretty hard to get a job. And so fast forward, I helped to start up a nonprofit foundation that was the U.S. arm of the largest nonprofit in the world called BRAC. And at BRAC, it was a startup, so I started as an intern, and then I was the first full-time staff. And we had to get a lot of stuff done really quickly. So I just started contacting my friends who were in marketing at AOL and at McKinsey doing strategy consulting. And I put them on these short-term, discrete, structured projects. And I had 9 of them help me out. And in 9 months, we raised $40 million for BRAC. And it taught me a big lesson. And the lesson wasn't that every nonprofit organization can raise $40 million in 9 months. The lesson was that by using pro bono, it actually freed up the time of our amazing president and CEO, Susan, to actually focus her time on fundraising. And without those 9 skills-based volunteers, we would have never had the time to let Susan focus on that. So skills-based volunteering and pro bono actually built capacity mm-hmm. for BRAC. And that's, then the 2 pieces came together and I was like, all right, well,
done.
Let's build it.
Well, I actually want to tease out a couple things from what you've said, because when I think about investment banking, that's to me the least brave choice, put it that way, for a lot of us coming out of school, right? Because there's such a heavy recruiting and so much focus on that industry. And then when you flip to going from investment banking to basically deciding I'm going to continue on a completely different path and go into the nonprofit space, granted with a lot of skills, that's possibly the most brave choice one can make if you look at it from a certain perspective. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that millennial thinking, because I think that's very millennial thinking, and just give folks a sense of how you get the courage to make that kind of leap and how much you thought about it as you were going through that process.
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, I don't feel like it was brave because I always knew what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And so the goal was always what I was focused on, and these were just decisions that I had to make in order to get closer and closer to my goal. I think what is brave, though, is when people are telling you, you're selling out because you're going into investment banking, right? So I've always been very loud about the fact that I am here because I want to make the world a better place. And so when you tell people that you want to make the world a better place, and then you go into investment banking, they're like, seriously? Yeah. And so that I think was what was hard. And I had that experience even before banking when I was, and I continue to be really passionate about the environment. So in college, I went and I lived at the biosphere. I don't know if you guys remember the biosphere from the movie The Biodome. So I lived at the biosphere. That's how passionate I was about the environment. And after that semester in the biosphere, this was going into sophomore year of college. I decided that my first internship, because I cared about the environment, was to go and work for Shell Oil. And my peers were like, you are such a sellout. Like, how does this make any sense? And I was like, well, if we're going to create environmental change, we have to go to the players that are actually going to make the biggest difference in the world. And so I wanted to go into the belly of the beast and figure out and learn how this organization or this company worked. Yeah. And I think that in terms of relating it back to millennials, I don't know if it relates to millennials or just people who have a goal.
Well, I think that's very millennial, though. That results-oriented approach and the thoughtfulness around it and being deliberate, even when you don't realize necessarily that you're being deliberate.
Or maybe also the fact that for us as millennials, our goal isn't to work at a certain company. Our goal is not to have the brand name of, I'm going to go and I'm going to work at GE for the rest of my life. I think that we think about these jobs as a part of a longer journey.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think one of the things you'll hear from a lot of millennials is that there's a moment where they realize what that thing is, where they want that journey generally to land up. And I wonder if you have a moment or an experience like that you can point to that sort of awakened what is clearly a very formative passion in you for the work that you're doing.
Sure. And in fact, that you're sparking me to actually go back, if you don't mind, to the reason why I care about the cause that Catch a Fire is focusing on.
Absolutely.
And then get back to your question. So yes, Catch a Fire is this online marketplace where nonprofits can get talent and volunteers can volunteer their skills. But why is this so important to me? Well, there are two key things that I see in the world that are massive problems that Catch a Fire is solving. One, that the nonprofit sector is pretty darn inefficient and ineffective in many ways. And I know many of you work in the nonprofit sector, and I applaud you and I love the space, but at the same time, I want to give you the tools and the learning and everything that you need to operate as efficiently and as effectively as possible, because yours is the most important bottom line. And you should not be resource constrained in any way in order to achieve your goals. And so we want to make the nonprofit sector more efficient and more effective, and our approach to that is to help nonprofits use human capital in the smartest, most efficient way, because we think that if you're using human capital well, you're going to have a stronger organization, period. And so by using skills-based and knowing how to use skills-based and pro bono well, you're actually leveraging that dollar and making that dollar grow to $10. So that $1,000 match fee, if you're getting a website UI UX designer for $1,000, I guarantee you're not going to be able to find that in the marketplace for less than $20,000. So driving that talent to you in an efficient way is what we're passionate about. And the second, which is truly dear to my heart, is the idea and the belief that the volunteer experience has a power to transform an individual to be somebody who gives for the rest of their life. The volunteer experience as that catalyst to awaken the change maker, meaning that when you have an experience, a volunteer experience, that makes you feel like the person in Bangladesh is the exact same as you, or why was I born where I was, and this woman was born in a rural village in Bangladesh. When you realize that that's just arbitrary, kind of random, I think it makes us more empathetic, more compassionate people that will give back for the rest of our lives.
And more connected.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's what we're trying to do by pushing really great volunteer experiences into the world. And in terms of mine, I've had several, but the one that I think perhaps was the first that I remember was when I was living in Beijing. I moved to Beijing again when I was 8, which was right after the Tiananmen Square incident. And so it was a very interesting time to be in China. It was when China's doors were opening for the first time. The one-child policy was, we saw the effects of it, which means that there were orphanages just filled with girls. And I, as a little 8-year-old, went and volunteered at these orphanages with all of these girls who, in fact, looked just like me. I'm Chinese of blood, but I grew up in Australia, and to actually see girls who looked like me in this lot was the first time that I realized that, you know, perhaps life is pretty darn arbitrary and there's a lot of luck involved. And, you know, if I've been given the circumstance that I've been given, I have a lot of responsibility to give back to those who actually aren't able to achieve their potential.
Yeah. Well, make the leap for us from there to skills-based volunteering, because so much of what we've talked about is obviously very meaningful, but it can be pretty singular. So how do you relate that back to this sort of bigger question that you've focused on so much in your work of skills-based volunteering?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things in skills-based. One is that, you know, giving your skills makes it really relevant to who you are. Volunteering has been a part of this society from the moment that America was born. And way back then, you know, we didn't have a knowledge-based economy. We literally were doing things, you know, manually. And volunteerism continues to be, you know, more of the manual sort. But the workforce and our labor force has really evolved into, again, a knowledge-based economy. And so if volunteering is, you know, back in the, you know, Middle Ages, so to speak, and we're still pushing those types of opportunities on people who are knowledge-based workers, we have a disconnect. And so I think volunteering becomes powerful when the individual actually is choosing that experience because it's relevant to them and they're passionate about it. And skills-based gives people the opportunity to use something that is super relevant with a cause that they can choose. Catch a Fire structures projects so that an individual can work on a project, and that's really empowering because the individual then has an opportunity to grow their skills. It's a professional development and leadership opportunity. And then speaking to, you know, the millennial, I think there's a couple important things. One, we want choice. Two, we care about growing constantly. Like this point of professional development is critical. Oftentimes, and this is in a small subset of millennials obviously, but oftentimes the most career-oriented millennial will choose professional development and growth opportunity over the size of their paycheck. And I certainly know that firsthand because some of my best millennial employees were those that had offers of, you know, much bigger paycheck salaries than what I could offer, but they're choosing to come to Catch a Fire because they know that they will get, you know, a learning experience of their lifetime. And I think that's true also about skills-based, is that it's not just about giving back, but it's also about gaining. And I think that that's really important.
Well, it's a whole self argument again, right? Because you're bringing your whole self to your volunteer experience, but also to the work that you're doing on a day-to-day basis for your livelihood. I wonder if you could speak directly to senior leaders for a second, because I think everything that you've said is great, but I bet they're wondering, well, why is this worth it? Like, why is the thing that I'm doing right now, regular old CSR, not good enough? And why do I really need to move to a skills-based model rather than sending my kids off to, or my millennial employees off to, you know, build houses for the weekend?
Right. Well, I think that, you know, we've gotten a lot of good insights from every speaker that's been up here about, you know, what millennials care about. Some statistics to share are that, you know, one, the millennial is no longer just the future. The millennial is in the workplace today. The average age at PwC is 27 years old. 27 years is like straight up a millennial. So millennials are here and they're going to be here for a lot longer. So if you're thinking about millennials as a future, you're way behind the times because millennials are right here today. And only 17% of millennials are engaged in their work, in the workplace in corporate America. That's a pretty scary statistic. Furthermore, 40% of millennials are actively disengaged, and what that means is that they're doing things that go against the mission of your company, and obviously that's a really, really bad thing. So when you think about how do you, first of all, your employees are your most important asset, How do you make them happy so that they're actually productive and so that they're pushing your company forward is, I think, a question that directly affects the bottom line.
Absolutely.
So this question of employee engagement, millennial employee engagement, becomes really important. And I think that skills-based volunteering is actually a very powerful solution to help get your millennial employees engaged in the workforce. Again, because they have choice to work on the causes that they care about, because they get to use their skills and they get to grow from a leadership perspective and from a professional development perspective. And they're getting to give back to the community, which is something that we care about deeply, that we want to work in an environment that is aligned with our values, and skills-based gives the millennial worker an outlet to do that. Not only that, it's driving tremendous value, deeper, broader value to the nonprofit community, which obviously as companies, we know that that is important. And so all around, you have a win-win situation.
Yeah, positive for the organization in addition to the millennial. Well, how does an organization do this if they want to get into the skills-based volunteering game?
Well, first of all, you contact me. No, but it's a really important question because it is hard. If we look at just today, 2013, which companies have a scalable skills-based volunteer program? It's kind of hard to think of one off the top of your head. You have, progressive companies like Deloitte that have a great pro bono program, and that pro bono program at Deloitte, you have 1,500 of their employees giving pro bono every single year, which is a very big investment on their end. That's a $60 million investment, but they have 57,000 employees. And the question now is, how do I get more of my 57,000 employees to participate? Because everybody who comes to Deloitte that's a millennial is saying, oh, I want to be on that pro bono project, but there's very few slots. And so what we've developed at Catch a Fire is a solution that is tech-enabled to help scale skills-based in a company, meaning that some of the biggest challenges that a company faces in actually getting skills-based volunteer opportunities to their employees is, one, how do you source those opportunities? How do you source those nonprofits? And then how do you actually scope those projects that are right for your employees? So Catch a Fire is doing that, but that is something that I think is the first question that companies need to think about is, who are those nonprofit partners we have that we can work with to source and scope these well-structured skills-based volunteer opportunities, and then how do we go about putting the resources on it to actually manage the program, to make sure that our employees have the tools to understand how to be a good skills-based volunteer and get the learning that they need out of that experience, so that it's not just something that sits in CSR, but now it becomes something that's really important for HR. Now it becomes something that's directly a HR and talent development program that chief talent officers should care about every single day.
Now we've got 2 minutes left. I heard a rumor you might have a video you wanted to show us. Is that still
the case? We can show the video. And this video it was made by MTV. So Catch a Fire worked with MTV to help the senior leadership team and some of their rising talent do pro bono. And so this was our experience with them.
All right, well, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, welcome the CEO. Give yourself a hand. CEO, Center for Employment Opportunities, is a space and a place that is for brothers and sisters who believe in a second shot.
To the people at CEO, I love them, because if it wasn't for them, I'll probably be back in prison right now. I've been on a job interview. He asked me, about myself, my life, work experience, conviction. And thanks to CEO, I was able to answer that question. And he was like, Scott, you got the job.
I think the essence of CEO is that we offer an immediate opportunity to people who are coming home from prison, who are motivated to do the right thing. But it's just hard to make it clear that what we do matters for everyone
What I loved about Catch a Fire is they understood how to match nonprofits who were interested in some kind of change, but didn't necessarily have the resources or the cash to get top talent. MTV partnered with Catch a Fire and did a national search to all of your nonprofits and said which of them could benefit from an overhaul by the staff at MTV.
I was just so excited that something as iconic as MTV would even be interested in something like CEO.
From that first meeting to us having joint conversations, whether it be on the phone or email exchanges, and doing it in a way that is fresh and very, very thoughtful and very intense, but not intrusive.
Our goal was to give CEO a set of materials that they could work with now, but would also kind of grow with them over time. We're creating deliverables kind of in two key areas, storytelling, and there's also a social component where we'll be helping them kind of with their social story as they move forward.
I had some line that they're not changing lives, they're helping already changed lives do better.
So many people get comfortable in their corporate jobs that they forget, to take the time out to really, go out in the world and try to make a difference and to help change a life.
I haven't had this kind of collaboration of this caliber ever, and I've worked here for, 2 decades.
I think once you have the experience, you want to keep doing it, 1. 2, those people who didn't get to want to be part of that process. So I just think it is happily the wave of the future, and I think it's a really hopeful trend that is going to drive our audience and drive business as a result.
If you can do it for us, we have a very tough product to sell in a way, and I think to show that you can do something meaningful for an organization like CEO means you can do it anywhere for anyone.
Wow. You can clap for that too. So what's your grand vision for Catch a Fire? Bring us into the fold.
Sure. The grand vision for Catch a Fire is a world where nonprofits can do their work more easily because they have access to talent that they need, and that every individual has been awakened because they've had a powerful opportunity to see how important their talent is in making the world a better place, and so a citizenship that is more socially conscious, and where it's just normal for us to give back. And I think that thank goodness for the millennials, because I think that's already in our DNA, but I think driving, again, better volunteer opportunities, which are experiential learning opportunities to show people that they are powerful change makers, is really important to us. So we want to change the nonprofit sector. We want to change how giving is done so that it's more intentional. And we think that we really have an opportunity to change how corporate America participates in this challenge.
20 seconds. What's the biggest lesson you've learned on this journey?
I think the biggest lesson that I've learned on this journey is how important time is. So, we talked about skills-based volunteering. It's giving time versus money, and time is finite and money is not, in relative terms. And so, in thinking about every single day and how you're utilizing your time has been my biggest learning, and I think something that is important for everybody to think about.
And you're doing it well. Thank you so much to Rachael.
Thank you.